Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Doug Hayes, and I am the Mission Engagement Lead at Mantech. Welcome to today's Senior Enlisted Perspective Voice of the Warfighter panel. I'm honored to introduce the panel moderator, Chief Master Sergeant Brian Newman. Chief Newman is a highly accomplished senior enlisted leader and leverages extensive warfighter experience gained through deployments and operational roles spanning from the squadron to the combatant command level. He's held diverse cyber operations positions since entering the Air Force in 1997, and his career highlights include serving as the Commandant of United States Cyber Command. The Chief is now at the Pentagon, where he serves as a Senior Enlisted Advisor for Cyber Policy, directly advising the Assistant Secretary of Defense on official matters pertaining to the cyber domain and its personnel. Please join me in warmly welcoming Chief Newman.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Good afternoon. We are absolutely honored to be here, and this is definitely not about me, but that was a really cool introduction. I appreciate that, Doug. This is about these good people here, and those of y'all gathered here to listen today and ideally participate towards the end. So like I said, we're honored to be here, and I owe some thank yous. Thank you, obviously, to the audience. Thank you to my partners in crime, my fellow senior enlisted leaders who have joined me on the panel today. Industry is I want to be the primary thank you, because this is our interaction with you, and so we are eager to produce outcomes together with industry in this forum, and want to very much thank AFCEA for providing the format for us to do this, us in the Department of Defense. Very important. Thank you to Joint Force Headquarters Doden, the commander and the command senior enlisted leader, for inviting me to moderate this panel. Chief Yeager, their command senior enlisted leader for Doden, and senior enlisted advisor for DISA. Thank you, Iz. My name is Brian Newman, as you just heard, and I currently work in the Pentagon as the senior enlisted advisor to the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Cyber Policy. And her name right now is Miss Lori Buckhout. She's down in Tampa, Florida, and here we are in Baltimore. I think we'd all rather be here, right? Much better, absolutely. So thank you to her for allowing me to do this as well. Want to reinforce the Secretary of Defense's priorities a little bit, because we do serve I serve on the Secretary of Defense's staff, advising on all things cyber. We do warfighting in the Department of Defense. There's no question about that, and we've heard a lot about that in recent days and weeks and months. We've known it all along, because that's what we've done all along. But it's good to talk about it a little bit. These good people here are the example of who's ready, resilient, and the example of a disciplined warfighter. And we do have a laser focus on readiness and restoring the warfighter ethos. And that's not just the folks down at Soft Week in Tampa. It's the communicators here who actually make, arguably, the whole warfighting machine go round. So our purpose today on this panel is to highlight the importance of the DoD's and DISA's modernization efforts on the tactical edge, and Joint Force Headquarters Doden's critical role in command and control, with a focus on securing and defending the Doden. Our intent here, why you're sitting here listening, is to hear from these good warfighters so that we can learn about their experiences. Absolutely everything we do in the Department of Defense hinges on our ability to communicate in a secure and resilient fashion. This is absolutely a team sport, as I noted a little bit earlier. The DoD rarely develops our own technology. We partner with industry and adapt it for our warfighting efforts. And I do have a question for the audience. What's a synonym for warfighter? We talk about warfighting, we talk about warfighters, but what is a synonym for warfighter? It's a human. It's a human trained in the profession of arms, and with the warfighting mindset, ready to do whatever we must for our country, and in the case of these folks right here, ensure that we can communicate. All right, so in the words of the Secretary of Defense, he said it a couple weeks ago, these people, it's the human that are the face of deterrence. You put the weapons in a human's hand, in a warfighter's hands, and that's what deters our adversaries from doing something that we don't want. So, if you will, starting with you, Sergeant First Class Gonzalez, tell us where you're from and where you work right now, please.
Okay. Let's push this.
Nope, your mic should be out hot.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sergeant First Class Jocelyn Gonzalez. I was born in Austin, Texas, and I currently work at Joint Force Headquarters Doden as the Training, Readiness, and Exercises Senior Enlisted Leader.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Senior Master Sergeant Quan Holmes. I am the Senior Enlisted Leader of the Defense Information Systems Agency's J2 Intelligence Directorate. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Good afternoon, team. I am Master Sergeant Jason Lee. I grew up in Killeen, Texas. I am currently serving as the J3 Senior Enlisted Leader with my counterpart, Colonel Reeder, the Director of Operations for Joint Force Headquarters, Department of Defense Information Network.
And good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gunnery Sergeant Eric Casada. I'm originally from Houston, Texas, and I am currently over at the Pentagon serving with DISA, JSSC, JCN, the Operations Division, currently acting as their superintendent in charge of training and standardization.
Thank you very much. And you can see we looked far and wide across the country and found our best service members from Texas and Louisiana. So we appreciate that. So this is a constantly evolving space. We know that. We are all partners in this business. We're going to focus on a few things today. And Master Sergeant Lee, I'm going to throw the first question to you. And let's talk about the security of data, because that's a fairly important facet of what we do to achieve lethality and actually enable a warrior ethos. So based on your experiences, will you please describe for the audience the importance of information assurance and security, especially data, for leaders and decision making?
So thank you for the question, by the way. That's a fantastic question, because one of the key tenets that we learn in IT and cyberspace from the get-go is we talk about this triad, the CIA triad, or confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? When we talk about this, one of the things that we're taught is that if you skew one way, it's at the expense of the other way. Well, in our line of work for defending the Doden and supporting the warfighter, I would argue all three of those tenets of the CIA triad must be done in parallel. We cannot afford to not have data going across the network confidentially. We want to make sure that the data is right and correct, so the integrity of the data is there. And then, utmost importance, availability. If that data is not there, the commander cannot make a decision that they're trying to close that gap with. For instance, when I was serving in Afghanistan, industry was able to get those drone feeds into the TOC, but then they went one step further and figured out how to get that same drone feed to the Apache helicopter pilots, so they could see over the mountain just as the commander could see over the mountain, and that reduced the threat. So where we were able to handle that kind of capability in near real time, that was a wealth of information. Now I'd take it a step further. What if I was the adversary and I compromise that feed? And now the commander or that Apache pilot, they see something on their screen, but it's not there. So by securing that data, make sure that drone feed was up and operational, we saved lives and made the warfighter more effective when we were downrange in Afghanistan. So that's where our next step is how do we protect those kind of communication links.
Appreciate that. And I do remember that RQ-11 Raven in use back in 2009, 2010 in Afghanistan. Obviously, since then, it seemed like it was a kind of the beginning, the forefront of using drones in combat on the battlefield. Now it's commonplace. absolutely critical to secure those feeds. Let's continue with a little bit different line of thought. Gunny Quesada, let's talk about resiliency for a second. Resiliency of our systems. Can you talk about the importance and why the military places such a high value on the resilience of our communication systems and kind of connect it to the whole CIA conversation Master Sergeant started?
Absolutely, Chief. So as far as resiliency goes, I mean, that becomes very critical for us in the military because we have a lot of no-fail missions. We have a lot of very niche systems that do very specific things, like, for instance, I like to use the example of missile defense. So if we have something that is out there specifically for detection, any kind of atmospheric anomalies, rocket launches, things of that nature. Absolutely, all of us want that to be up at all times. And while we're going to have redundant systems, there's going to be ways that it's going to be tracked, even if a system goes down. That resiliency for that system to come back up and continue doing that shared responsibility of maintaining that redundant watch is very important. And that goes for really just about everything that we have, because whether or not, as the Master Sergeant spoke on, like getting that critical information to the leaders that needed to disseminate information or disseminate orders, that is all very critical. So again, just being able to bring our stuff back up quickly, timely manner, really highlights the availability portion at least, and I think that's one of the reasons it's so critical for us.
As service members, we're professional problem solvers, and we pride ourselves in our ability to troubleshoot anything we must. But it sure helps to have a resilient system provided by our friends in industry to make sure we pair those two things together and can accomplish the mission. Let's talk about interoperability and survivability a little bit. So First Class Gonzalez, I'm going to throw this one to you. Continue with the same theme. Let's talk about the modern battlefield. Seamless communication, resilient infrastructure, those things are paramount. But can you talk us through how important interoperability is in your perspective?
Yes. So just a little bit of background. Prior to being stationed at Fort Meade, I did work with the Allied Joint Forces Command in Brunsum, Netherlands, so working with our NATO partners. Specifically, I worked for the Senior National Representative. He's the most senior ranking person that's put there in this multinational command to represent the U.S. interests. So I understand interoperability. It's important for him to be able to communicate with our NATO partners as well as other senior representatives in the other forces, Joint Force Commands in Norfolk, Naples, all over. But when we talk about the modern battlefield and survivability, it goes back to Gunny's point of resilience. Because secure comms, interoperable comms don't matter if it's not resilient. And I'll give you an example. When I was stationed there, Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. And Russia has been imposing cyber attacks on Ukraine for years. But at this time, although Ukraine is not a NATO member, the other NATO countries, including, the U.S., wanted to provide aid, and these cyber attacks were even more persistent after that 2022 invasion. And at this point, it's preventing us to be able to provide that aid to Ukraine. So, again, resilient communication is important in order for us to be able to do that for other countries to be able to provide aid. I would like to add on, though, that's done through continuous modernization, and we can't do that without our industry partners.
Thank you. You made some really good points. We've kind of spanned the breadth of conversation of data security, resilient infrastructure, interoperability, being prepared for the unknown. You mentioned Ukraine. the invasion of Ukraine, we didn't see that coming very far ahead of when it came. And being able to partner with a non-NATO country and ensure that our systems still work and our data stays secure, that requires piecing together a lot of different things. Let's go to Senior Homes and let's talk about threat intelligence for a little bit. How do we ensure that we can leverage today's tools and infrastructure to automate our threat-informed, how do we stay threat-informed is how I would characterize that, to ensure we can use our operational technology and communications infrastructure?
So if I'm understanding correctly, just staying threat informed to utilize our technology. Let's talk about through automation, right? So our workforce has changed drastically over the years. We started out doing IT support, server administration, network administration, and the cyber workforce now focuses on defeating the enemy in gray space. We focus on having cyber warfighter lethality and deterring the adversary. So through automation, we utilize our industry partner tools, security information and event management capabilities, or a security orchestration, automation, and remediation tool, right? Starting out with our endpoint detection and response tools, and we communicate that to the industry partners. Through the industry partners, we acquire these ready-made solutions, different capabilities from different vendors, from different mission partners. What we do is we aggregate all of that together, and we create one solid security solution that helps us bring together all of those capabilities together through interoperability of the actual tools, right? This helps the cyber warfighter today perform those advanced techniques like link analysis, those advanced techniques like analytical system of metrics, right? Putting together and reversing the diamond model or reversing the cyber kill chain, utilizing cyber analytic repositories, and we're bouncing that information off of the threat actor themselves. We're looking at the key performance indicators of the threat actor, and we're overlaying it against a framework, and we're reversing that. That way we can understand operationally from a military perspective how the industry technological advances from a tech perspective, pair those two together. This allows us to stay lethal. This allows us to stay in the gray space, on the gray space, and deter the adversary from our operating environment. It also allows us to get quantitative metrics. So we could take that information, those numbers, and pass it on to our leaders. That way we're no longer making a hypothesis about what the adversary is going to do next. We can make data-driven decisions based off the actual actions using retrospective analysis and actually know what the adversary is going to do next. And a leader within J2 or within DISA can make data-driven decisions and move forward based off of that.
I appreciate that. So I'm going to repeat back a little bit of what I heard. Automation is key to keeping us threat informed, but automation isn't the key to everything. It enhances our ability to keep our senior military and national decision makers informed with secure data so that they can make timely decisions. Fantastic. I'm going to go back to the good Master Sergeant Lee. Let's talk. Army knows something about existing in austere environments. Can you discuss a little bit about the ability to operate securely in an austere environment?
So when we describe an austere environment, you don't have really anything, and so one of the first things that we attempt to do is establish that communications link, whether it's through a geosynchronous satellite or through a radio shot, right? But now with these new technologies industry is bringing forward, right? We're bringing we're bringing smaller and smaller tactical communication kits with 5G cell phone radios and whatnot. The challenge is these are great technologies that speak to the availability of getting a austere network up and running quickly, but then you have to secure it. And where we could see gains, as I mentioned earlier, we need to do all three parts of the CI triad concurrently. Where we can see gains is using these industry technologies, throwing encryption or obfuscation or all of those kind of things to build resilient type communication networks, smaller packages, and then if that communication link decides that it doesn't want to play nice for whatever that day, common thing we would say in the field, solar flares. That's why the network is down. Well, if the solar flares cause the network to go down, those communication networks are still working at the local level for that warfighter on ground, still generating the telemetry and still generating that data. So then when we resolve the solar flares, the network rebuilds itself automatically and then reports that data back to higher echelons to provide those data-driven decisions that, like Senior mentioned, whether you're at the tactical level, operational level, or strategic level of warfare.
I appreciate that. What you're saying is basic security, maybe not so basic. It's got to be standard. We don't need our remote forces deployed in far-flung areas around the world worrying about the security of their systems and whether their data has integrity. Gunny Quesada, I think you've had some experience in austere environments too. I hear Marines like to do austere things as well. Can you talk about, from your perspective and some of your experiences around the world, talk through the hurdles of information dissemination and kind of tie that back into the secure aspect, please?
Absolutely, Chief. So, as the good Chief did mention, we do tend to go out and like to be a little expeditious at times. Something that kind of comes into that is actually largely what the Masson kind of went off of, how we have these small form factor network packages. That is kind of the wave of the future. Marine Corps is definitely getting to a point where we're trying to get away from like the big box network packages that we used to take out, which set up a giant fob with, large satellites that need generators, and we're getting kind of away from that. Obviously, portion of the security spectrum of that is we're getting away from being out in the middle of the desert. We're getting into a place where we have to be cognizant of near-peer adversaries and other threat actors that could scan for RF signals and things of that nature. So you have the immediate physical security concerns and things like that, but then also a little bit of a technical and training concern in that while these small form factor packages are out there, they're there. It has not proliferated the forces yet. So we still have a lot of our guys that are out there training on these large-scale model network devices that are just not going to be doing as they're practicing until they get into one of those more expeditious groups. And really roundabout, that creates a security risk in of itself. Until that starts to get out there to all the warfighters at the lowest levels, we have to be aware that some of these guys could go out and be in austere environments. They may not be having the data packages that are going to get them relevant information on the spot. One weird way that tied into one of my commands is they just alluded to just leaving the data portion out of it. We were trying to get to a more high mobility kind of COC environment, and that did not have room for generators. That didn't have room for something that would power those big box items. And it all just kind of ties it back to that security portion. If we don't have that, that's information we lack. Unless we're just going to get it straight from radios, which takes time, you don't get the visual representation. And it's kind of where my head is at on that.
So smaller, faster, lighter, more capable, even though we all do like the sound and smell of a diesel generator, because that's part and parcel to kind of everything we've done downrange in our careers. Fantastic. I appreciate that. Can you follow up on that a little bit? I believe you've been ashore, as our only representative of the Department of the Navy here on the panel, talk through. Yes, I know you're a Marine.
Thank you, Chief.
Talk through what you've experienced as you've gone afloat as part of a MU.
So, in regards to which aspect, Chief? Sorry.
So the remote capability and
Yes.
the faster, smaller, lighter, interoperable, pretty much anywhere in the world.
Okay, absolutely, Chief. And especially with the word interoperable in there, obviously, being on the boat, the Marines do not get the most control of that network environment. We have a lot of that goes over to our sailors in the radio room. They control that bandwidth. They can give us that throughput. So we also have to make sure that we play nice with their systems, so that interoperability becomes very crucial and relevant again. However, more to the Chief's point, being in those small, isolated environments, it does give us a unique opportunity and experience to go through, and we control the entire network. So as our enlisted folks, me in particular, while I was on one of the MUs, our IA person, our information assurance guy, the guy who's in charge of all of our scan, our ACAS, he had the opportunity to go advon, as we say, so he got the chance to leave the boat early, go home, and that left a gap. So I got to fill in that gap. I got to learn all of the information assurance pieces. I had to run the SQL server, all very hip pocket, but being in those isolated environments, it forces us to learn. But that's kind of my experience with it. It was using what we had to the best of our abilities, and then if we had to go shoreside, in that instance, we did have some of those small form factor packages. So we were able to take those ashore, get connection back to the ship, and maintain that level of connectivity. But like I said, it's just not everywhere yet.
Perfect. So our warfighters are flexible. They're ready. It doesn't matter where you drop them. They have to be ready to function. And as communicators, we have to make sure our forces can talk. Master Sergeant Lee, the cyber domain is a contested domain. I think we all know that. There's a wide range of actors due to the low cost of entry. Can you talk about the importance of threat association and attribution to a defender to provide context to detected activity on our systems?
So I might upset my Senior Holmes here a little bit as my intelligence friends. When you're the local defender down at the lowest level, you're usually responding to a system because it went down, or it's not operating properly, or it's not doing something, and so you're starting to troubleshoot. And at the end of the day, the local defender doesn't care what's going on. Their job is to get the system back up and running, right? That doesn't help my intelligence friends at all to possibly wipe out digital forensics evidence, right? So how do we make the warfighter better trained to understand that they can get that system back online using capabilities that industry has developed in a manner that still generates the artifacts and telemetry data that eventually that information will get back up to higher echelons and provide an ability for us to understand the adversary's TTPs and to make an educated assessment of this looks to be aligned to this APT, or this looks to be aligned to this actor, because at the end of the day, when you're trying to get that system back up, a threat is a threat is a threat. You don't care about attribution, but the nation cares about attribution. Senior leaders care about the attribution. And so we need more training and education on ensuring that when that local defender is trying to get back in the fight and make sure that data is there to provide potentially a life-saving decision for the warfighter currently in the austere environment, but also still give that information back to our intelligence friends to then help identify where that threat came from. Because in the cyberspace domain, the threats range from nation state to the lowest to a teenager, somewhere located in anywhere in the world. it's just that's how massive of a domain that we're trying to fight through.
Senior Holmes, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, so I'll piggyback right on that and kind of start where you left off at. We'll talk about attribution. So in an IT realm, you start with that one incident. And just like Masson said, threat's a threat. Let's get the thing fixed. So now we have an incident, right? When it comes over to intelligence, let's say that incident becomes an incident for enough people. Now it's defined as a problem, right? With the normalized and enhanced threat intelligence information, pair that with education and training, the readiness of your personnel, right? That allows you to take that incident or problem to actually look at it and begin to now monitor that attributed information, and now you can predict what's going to happen. So you can start performing predictive analysis on your reoccurring problem that's existed, and that's what we do now. So we utilize our tools from our industry partners, and we connect them via APIs, right? And so we aggregate all of this information, and we have attribution, and we feed it up for validation. Now we can start to lean forward in defending the environment. Now we can start to taking some of our highly technical skilled individuals that's been performing the incidents and move them forward to threat hunting. And we can start to eliminate some of the reoccurring problems that's happened in the environment, and then put that into, like you said, continuous monitoring. Once we have the attribution and it's in continuous monitoring, we've closed the loop on that. We should, and we do, put that to the side and let the AI and machine learning handle that. And now the cyber war fighters of today, we focus more on the known unknowns per se. We look at the indicators of attack as opposed to the indicators of behavior as identified on the pyramid of pain. If that answers the question, just kind of following up on how we move through that entire warfighting cycle and staying ahead and how we campaign through operations.
And then he brings up a good point too, right? Senior brings up the point about generating essentially patterns, and we could see maybe a certain subset of capabilities are able to be compromised through the totality of the DODN. And so by able to make sure that we are generating the right kind of data, whether it's through automated means, using security validation type capabilities or anything to see, hey, to get ahead, as we say, left of bang, to get ahead, we're able to be more nimble and more agile and more innovative in stopping the adversary from getting into the DODN. So it's a continuous loop where the intelligence guys will help feed the operations teams, and then we can inform the totality of the force that, hey, this is something that we need to get after and take care of before it becomes a larger problem across not just the DoD, but maybe even the rest of the federal government.
So let's tie it together real quick. I'm going to quickly summarize three things. Number one, on the battlefield, the communicators, they want combat lifesaver for their IT equipment. They want the stuff to work. If it doesn't work, get it back working as quickly as possible. For those whose job it is to figure out what's going on, if there's an anomaly, if so, what is that anomaly and how is it going to impact us? That's the intelligence professionals, that's Joint Force Headquarters, DODN, that's DISA, that's a lot of partners working together. And let's be honest, the threats that we're facing in the DoD rarely originate on DoD systems. It's frequently our private sector, our commercial partners who see that stuff first. So that partnership between the DoD and non-DoD is absolutely critical to make sure that we know what's coming long before we have to apply some life-saving capabilities on the battlefield to make sure our IT systems work, or our communication systems. The third thing is, once we do have some sort of attribution, leveraging that entire partnership, it's our job. That's what I heard you say. It's my job in the Pentagon to figure out what the policy is and how to respond, and based on who it is, whether it's a teenager in a basement or a nation state actor, attempting to do things potentially way broader than against the Department of Defense. Good conversation. Let's shift the focus just a little bit for a second. Let's talk about. We're going to kind of tie this back together into resilience and interoperability, but let's talk about, and I want Sergeant First Class Gonzalez to talk a little bit about how to ensure that our infrastructure in the DoD does not lag behind what's in the private sector or commercially available, so that we can keep pace with technological advancements.
I think it still goes back to what Master Sergeant Lee and Chief or Senior Holmes were talking about. At JFHQ Doden, we're in the warfighting business. This is an IT, and we're the warfighter, specifically the cyber domain. And as Master Sergeant Lee mentioned, this domain ranges from, the child or the kid in the basement to anything else that you can imagine. And what's a little bit scary about this is that it's not like the other domains, land, air, space. You can't see it. So in order to keep up, and it's constantly evolving as well, and in order to keep up with that, we do have to change our mindset, and that's kind of what they were talking about. We need to get more towards data and analytics, and again, that's where our industry partners come into play, helping us to identify these threats faster and to respond faster as well. That's going to give us that operational edge. At JFHQ Doden, General Stanton loves to talk about establishing lethality. And again, in the cyber domain, we do that by going to the enemy and imposing costs on that enemy.
Yes, we do. Peace through strength. I think we've all heard that. Let's take this back in garrison a little bit. We've talked a lot about the infrastructure downrange and how it's important to be resilient and interoperable anywhere in the world, any type of remote capability or area. How do you think modern infrastructure in garrison impacts our personnel's desire to join and continue to serve in the armed forces?
That's a great question. That's obviously going to get people to join, which is what we need, what we want. Why would they want to be a part of an organization, a military that is lagging behind industry partners? Well, that's what's going to keep them coming, and we need that. We need a strong, smart, lethal force, and we do that by staying in line with our industry partners.
Let me give you a couple examples of what we've talked about and what we do talk about. And that's ensuring that there's proper cell service, just so that your phones work in garrison on a military post. Our service members expect that. A great example of folks downrange with access to communication technology that they didn't previously have was on a recent deployment of the USS Abraham Lincoln. They connected using a satellite capability, and it was cheaper and faster and allowed the sailors aboard to communicate not only for mission, but also plenty of bandwidth to communicate back home to their families and friends, which improves the quality of life for everybody and improves the mission readiness of that force as well.
Chief, can I add something to that as well?
Please do.
So, because you mentioned, how do we get people to want to be a part of this? And I spoke at a local high school recently, and that actually was one of their biggest concerns is family. When they deploy communication with their families, how often can they see them and whatnot? So we can't underestimate something like that, especially for somebody who's thinking about joining and serving their country. That really matters to them.
So, Chief, I'll expand on that too, because coincidentally, I spoke with those on the Abraham Lincoln, as I had an opportunity at JFHQ Doden to go and see the Abraham Lincoln as they were validating how secure their systems were in San Diego. And that was a huge topic of discussion, how that capability raised the morale through the roof for the ship. And for those guys, and I feel for Gunny here, right? When they're out there in the middle of the ocean, there's not much to do. So having a capability that is fast and reliable for the morale of the force is just as important, because those sailors were more willing to be more effective in the time of need when let's say a ship there's a fire breaks out on the ship. Well, if they're motivated, they're willing, and they're going to take care of that threat before it becomes a problem.
Great point. And I will offer there's very few things that sound quite as cool as fighter jets landing and taking off of an aircraft carrier, whether you can see it or not. That's peace through strength right there. Senior Holmes, I'm going to go back to you for a quick second, because our ability to see the whole threat picture is really, really important. It doesn't matter if you're in garrison, downrange, or in the Pentagon establishing policy. As cyber threats rapidly incorporate commercial technological advancements, military cyber defenses must keep pace. Can you discuss the importance of the DoD leveraging industry, our partners, to help integrate innovations to integrate complex intelligence?
Yes, appreciate you for the question. And I'm going to actually steal some of the stuff from my boss, Colonel Leach here. This is one of his initiatives that he has going on right now, right? To work directly with the industry partners to onboard those ready-made solutions. We have the ability to develop different capabilities, whether it's with operational technology or whether it's with command and control or other type of government off-the-shelf solutions that can help feed threat intelligence into operations. However, it's our industry partners that have spent and dedicated lots and lots of time, energy, and effort developing their particular solutions for a specific capability that we can onboard that's already ready-made. Now, you take that and you mix it with some of our operational technology, and you mix the direct collaboration of talking about sitting an enlisted individual, an enlisted warfighter, or an officer of a warfighter right next to that industry partner, right next to that technical account manager. Now you have the ability of a subject matter expert on your platform and a subject matter expert on our operational environment sitting right next to each other. This advances that capability that we need, whether it's in the Air Force or Army or Marines, across the board in all services components. So this will take a process, the legacy government onboarding process, from months and weeks to now we're talking days and weeks. That's the importance of actually pairing the personnel within a DoD with the industry partners, because the government process of procurement can be kind of slow, whatnot. However, when we partner together and we already have the information from the operating environment and we pair it with you all's capabilities, we can excel that process. This allows some of our personnel to move, to have maneuverability throughout different operating environments. This allows us to have versatility with our forces. This allows us to actually rebuild our defenses with you all at the same time, while still moving forward, while still proceeding in the gray space area, and also while still utilizing your innovative technologies.
I appreciate that, and I think you highlighted the fact that we work together, the DoD with industry, and there have been some really good advancements as of late to accelerate that acquisition process. And you will likely see more in the very near future. I would love to open it up for questions. I don't want to close this panel without leaving some opportunity for questions. If anybody here has a burning question, now would be a fantastic time to ask it before these good people go their merry ways. So with that, are there any questions? If not, we'll keep talking. I'll keep asking questions to them. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Appreciate you guys taking the time to come talk to us today. So I know a key role of the job is to get some enlisted feedback. I'd be interested in if there's any common threads in the feedback that you're getting from our enlisted warfighters, particularly on the operational side. I'm sure you guys get lots of non-operational feedback, but on operational challenges that they're facing. Perhaps some deltas between what leadership is expecting of them out in the field and what they feel they're capable of delivering. On the industry side, we have a tendency to, our interface is not necessarily the person who's at the point of, of the door breach or at the keyboard. So I'd be kind of interested on some perspectives from the troops.
I think I could start with that. So how? We'll start with that question. How? A lot of the troops, we interact with your platforms and your software, and we reach the end state. A lot of times we want to know the how behind it. What's the framework? What's the process? That way it can be iterative, agnostic of the software, right? So we can utilize your industry software, but across multiple platforms. So we want to know the how, and we want to use that how to fill some of our gaps. Because just like the gunny said, in our steer environments, we may not have that capability. So a lot of times we may need to fall back to the how, to the framework behind it, to the data flow, to the underlying cause of why is your product doing that and why is it presenting it to us that way, right? Is it going to align with our operational need and end state? And that's really what we ask a lot about. It's furthering our education on your product. That way it can help us achieve an end state faster. And I think if we better had an understanding through some training with you all, then it will help us actually better utilize the products that you onboard to us. And then we can get more value out of that product as a customer, if that makes sense.
I'll expand on Senior Holmes. He's spot on. If I understand the how, because I'm going to tell you, the Marines are probably better at breaking things than soldiers, but if we know how something operates, we're going to take your product and whatever data you're generating with that product, I might use it for something totally different that you never thought I was going to use that product for. And that is commonplace today, and that will be commonplace in the future, and that is commonplace for my children who are learning about AI right now, right? You don't know your intended use case of your product is not how it's going to operate in an austere environment. And so we understand the how, and then we break down the delta of training. When you look at certain vendors, to make this simple thing, it's very complex behind the scenes. To take a capability and make it a push button, some of us understand that took years of research and development. How do we make that faster? And then how do we train people to do that? Because I know from personal experience, I'm using data from all kinds of different disparaging data sets, and I'm mashing together that you would have never thought that a warfighter would do down at the lowest level, just so I can answer a pretty simple question to the commander's eyes, because the commander was sold something that says this can do X, Y, or Z, when in reality, it might produce a nice little visual, but it's not actually doing anything of usefulness to the warfighter at the end of the day.
I think adaptability and ability for our very creative and ingenious service members to quickly adapt the products that we receive to the warfighting requirements, usually on the fly, is very, very important, and kind of wrapping up what I just heard y'all say. Mm-hmm. Good question. I appreciate that. And any other questions? All right.
So for the enlisted, for our non-commissioned officers, from your perspective, what are the opportunities that we need to provide for you and the soldiers that we're not doing right now? What, either education, additional, benefits, or, accomplishment in mission? Everybody wants to have those. So what are the additional things for our enlisted that we need to start doing for support retention and development from our enlisted force?
Anybody want to touch the retention piece? That's a good one.
I'll touch on it a little bit. Sir, one thing I would say that we kind of lack at times is like you said, actually, like almost exactly what you said. Everyone wants a purpose. And we have a tendency for that to become a gray area with our enlisted guys, because sometimes we have these systems and we don't have the opportunity to do much with them. I know we don't have the same level of ability to like do continuity as some, as our mission partners. But our guys being able to actually touch the systems, get at those administrative access and controls, I think that is one of the big things that would continue to steer them towards staying in, because they feel like they're gaining good, legitimate skill bases that they know will be able to continue with. Because if it's something that the industry is currently doing and we are matching that ability, we should be able to know that when we do transition, I'll know that I have years of experience within this system. So part of it's coming to us also as the senior NCOs to ensure they're getting the 2870 compliance, making sure they're able to do the job, but giving our guys that purpose, giving them the administrative ability to actually touch our systems, I think would be really instrumental in driving that purpose. That's my opinion.
I would definitely agree with that. In the Air Force, we say it's there are benefits of the Air Force, right? And this one that Gunny's talking about is called satisfaction. Job satisfaction, a sense of satisfaction, a sense of purpose within the mission. Being able to directly work with our industry partners side by side, not just in our environment, but in your environment as well, and learn some of those tactics, techniques, and procedures that are being performed in the industry. That way we can bring it back. The actual mission itself, understanding how your services and products actually pertain to our mission. Just having that sense of value. When we talk about retainability, of course the money, I got it. But nevertheless, it's the mission itself, right? It's the mission of being able to have a sense of end state, a sense of, hey, we're doing this, we're meeting the commander's intent, a sense of actually understanding that we are deterring enemies. And I hear that all the time from my colleagues that have retired. One of the things that they miss the most is the mission. The mission, the mission, the mission. We always talk about the mission, and that's where our value lies at with retainability. It's the mission, it's our colleagues, it's working in the austere environments, it's being able to be versatile, having resilience within those missions, being able to have control, working with our industry partners, and having that redundancy of services so that we can actually defeat the enemy. That's where our happiness, our retainability comes from.
I think it comes down to trust. Allow us to fail in a training environment. Make your products capable to be in a sandbox. And if we can be trusted to use those products, that's what Gunny and Senior basically sum it up, is trust. Trust us that we're going to do the right thing with those capabilities, and empower those members to do it. Because when you get down range, it might only be enlisted at the end of the day, and so they have to be entrusted and empowered to use those capabilities, and not come back to garrison and sit and watch capabilities on a shelf lose their warranty because they're not fielded.
So what I'm going to do now, that was a fantastic question, Colonel. Gunny, if you can, each of you 30 seconds, starting with you, Gunny, final thoughts to our audience on that or any other topic.
Final thoughts. Well, first of all, thank you all for your time. Thank you for standing by with us. I know some of us do have a monotone speaking voice, so appreciate everyone staying awake.
Why are you talking about me like that?
I was talking about myself. So.
Okay.
But no, I do want to stress the importance of our mission partners out there. Those of you in the industry, we legitimately do appreciate and also rely on you. So any of the topics that you overheard today, any of the things that you felt resonated, please just take that, run with it. If you have thoughts, something that you think could go help those young warfighters out in those austere environments, something that could make us more rapid, more ready, bring it to the table. That's what I would say.
Master?
I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you for listening. I think what I'll leave with is many years ago I had an instructor, and he said you either have time or money. The DoD, well, we don't always have money, but we most definitely have time. And so I encourage our industry partners to make those training environments and give us that capability to allow us to go out and fail successfully, because some of the greatest lessons I've learned in my career is failure, and how to bounce back from that, and that leads to innovation. So that's what I'll leave with.
I'll say just continue strengthening the partnership. Strengthening the partnership through innovation, strengthening the partnership through training, strengthening the partnership through that side-by-side direct collaboration with the troops on ground, with the personnel that has hands-on keyboard, as well as the support section to those individuals.
I also want to thank everybody for being here and for the questions, because you being here, you asking us these questions means that you care. So I look forward to the continued partnerships as well, especially from like a training and readiness perspective. I can't wait to see what we can do. And thank you.
Thank you. And to my fellow panelists, if I can speak, I think we would all agree you are the voice of the warfighter. You are the face of deterrence. The work you are doing underpins everything the Department of Defense does across the Joint Force. So we thank you very much, and thank you for sharing your insights and your time today. To the audience, thank you for attending. Thank you for hanging out on what's today? Wednesday afternoon? Is today Wednesday?
Yes.
I think so. Your contribution absolutely underpins every single thing we do in this space in the Department of Defense, so we appreciate that. And I got to tell you, this audience is pretty cool. A lot easier on me than my audience on a Monday, which was I was a speaker at a career day for a high school as well, and they were asking really hard, nerdy questions about quantum encryption and all kinds of stuff, thinking I knew all that stuff. So thank you for not asking those hard questions. I hope you received a peek into the mindset of the warfighter, the folks that are doing the business, the deep problem-solving, creative mindset that exists, and the need for deep partnerships with industry and across our all the different mission partners across our joint force, both inside and outside of the U.S. My challenge to you is to think like a warfighter. Think about solving hard problems. Think about what these folks are going to face on the battlefield, not just today, but tomorrow and the next day, and make their lives as easy as possible to get the mission done. Because our adversaries are doing the same thing, typically with less restrictions than we are. And what I would offer is that we have a fantastic team in the Pentagon and across our Department of Defense that exists, and we are ready and willing to work with you to get this job done. So once again, to General Stanton, to my boss, Ms. Buckhout, to Chief Yeager, to my fellow panelists, and to the audience, thank you so much for your time on this Wednesday afternoon, and hope you have a wonderful day. We will be around for a few minutes afterwards if anybody wants to have one-on-one conversations. So thanks again, AFCEA.